Part 31. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida. Chapter 301. Although this kind of strange thing doesn't happen frequently, it will become more frequent as the battlefield level increases. So, Gao Qiang was still a little puzzled. Lucia could only continue to explain, I used to be very interested in this incident, so I investigated it in depth as a puzzle game. And in the posts of many ancient dragon level and dragon god level bosses of the dragon clan, I still found clues. That was a senior of my dragon clan who was about to enter the infinite battlefield. He was lucky enough to survive a war. And according to his description, the reason for the failure of that war game was because a mythical race appeared on the battlefield. Gao Qiang was also stunned when he heard this. In his eyes, dragons are actually a mythical race. Then the mythical race in the other party's mouth must not refer to gods. With the arrogance of dragons, it is believed that true gods will not get the respect they deserve when they come to the dragon clan. In this case, who can be called a mythical existence by dragons? It's time. Lucia opened her mouth to solve Gao Qiang's doubts. It was the first time that Gao Qiang saw such deep panic and confusion in Lucia's eyes. Can you imagine that time is also a life of survival? Gao Qiang shook his head, I really can't think of it. According to you, there is a race called time in this war game. No, that's not what I mean. Lucia hurriedly explained. But since leaving the demon suppression tower, I feel that something is wrong in your human camp. From time to time, I feel a little absurd, but I can't tell where it is absurd. At this time, the skeleton lord came forward and hugged Lucia again, which made Lucia feel more secure. After sorting out her emotions, Lucia looked at Gao Qiang seriously. It is obvious that even if there is no time in this game, there are people who are closely related to time. What I am most afraid of is that time will keep an eye on us from now on. At this point, Lucia's meaning is already very clear. If time or people who are closely connected with time really exist in this war game, then everyone present may just be the other party's pawns. And now everyone is still alive and standing here, perhaps it is the time node that best suits the other party's interests after countless restarts. If there is such a person, I may be able to guess who the other party is. Gao Qiang looked far away at the distant dynasty. Whoever tempted Ling Yanning to do the act of dying together with Shang Guanhongchen will naturally be the most suspicious. It's just that you don't know me yet. Gao Qiang shook his head. For now, even if time really exists, it is just a person who sells his head. As Gao Qiang spoke, countless flames broke out in the sky. Following the clan protection army, the new army also launched an offensive. Mortars were placed in advantageous positions, constantly firing shells towards the direction of Lufeng Valley. Bai Hexio stood aside to cheer everyone up. Faster, faster. Why bother with useless accuracy? I'm experienced, listen to me, firing 100 shells in the same amount of time will definitely have a greater effect than a single aimed shell. Under Bai Hexio's rapid-fire guidance, the new army almost completely gave up accuracy and fired shells at Lufeng Valley in a plowing posture. Watching the shells soar into the sky, Gao Qiang then turned and looked at Lucia. No matter who the other party is, when we enter the imperial city, the truth will naturally come out. And now, we know. I'm sure to win. On the front line of the confrontation with the clan protection army. With the blessing of the Six Kingdoms seal, the 50,000 clan protection army led by Lian Qian made Shang Guanhongchen's million-strong army breathless. Even forced to the extreme, Shang Guanhongchen could only summon the 8-armed Yama again, trying to use the giant beast-level unit to reverse the unfavorable situation of the battle. Just at the same time when the 8-armed Yama appeared, countless bombs fell with the sound of breaking wind. Boom boom boom. The firelight illuminated the land almost without stopping for a moment. The 8-armed Yama swung the heavy sword vigorously. but before approaching Lian Qian's line, one by one, they fell on the way. "My lord, save me." The explosion continued. Shang Guanhongchen even saw a lord who was blown to the point of only a skeleton, trembling and crawling in front of him. Only the skeleton was left to survive tenaciously. What a strong willpower! But in the next moment, several shells hit Shang Guanhongchen at the same time, blowing the skeleton to pieces. Even Shang Guanhongchen was thrown out by the shockwave generated by the explosion. Blood soon dripped from Shang Guanhongchen's forehead, staining his vision red. The most important thing is that at this moment, Shang Guanhongchen received a new prompt. The new army has joined the battlefield. Since your technology level is one arrow lower than that of the new army, the combat effectiveness of you and your subjects will be reduced by half in this battle. The strength in his body is moving away from Shang Guanhongchen. The reduction in combat effectiveness leads to a decline in all aspects. This includes reduced strength, slower speed, poorer resistance, weakened recovery, and so on. If he still has the bonus of the Six Kingdoms seal, even if it is reduced so much, Shang Guanhongchen can still maintain combat effectiveness that exceeds the basic attributes. But now that he has lost the bonus of the Six Kingdoms seal, his combat effectiveness is reduced by 1 time. The original elite warriors were almost weakened into useless people, not to mention those ordinary soldiers who were not strong to begin with. More importantly, this rain of artillery in the sky seems to have no intention of stopping at all. Shang Guanhongchen looked up at the sky with blurred vision. The shells fell like flowers scattered by a fairy, all the way from the periphery of Lufeng Valley to the inside of the valley, dense and continuous. But he clearly studied the tone of this war game. This war game is obviously a high-level martial arts world based on the way of ministers, which just happens to coincide with his mechanical art. Then where did the shells of this mortar come from? Shang Guanhongchen was puzzled. But he knew that he couldn't even escape after being affected by the explosion, and he was afraid that he would die soon. Really, there are still many studies to do. Shang Guanhongchen's voice was weak, but he was somewhat relieved. Suddenly, he seemed to return to that moment in the past, when Gong Menken, still a young man, stretched out his hand to him. "Let's go to the sky together, okay?" Gong Menken smiled brightly. At that time, he was just a child who had just grown up, not the 3 ministers in the palace who were feared. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 302. It's all over. Lian Qian waved her hand to stop the advancing Clan Protection Army. With the Clan Protection Army blocking the outer exit of Lufeng Valley, the million-strong army of Wuji League inside could only be bombarded endlessly like a living target. With the return of the armies of various families, the channels for many lords of Wuji League to escape from Lufeng Valley were completely blocked. In the muddy land on the distant mountain, Soft Bone buried himself in the soil, watching the shells that kept washing the ground, and secretly smacked his lips. Even if he was a Soft Bone and stayed in the Lufeng Valley, he would inevitably end up in ashes at this moment. Then there was a sigh of emotion. It's a pity for that guy Gaimei. I reminded him that he should slack off and be buried in the ground. Hard bones, right? The harder the bones, the faster they break. Don't you think so, Supreme Lord? After saying that, Soft Bone looked aside flatteringly. In order to avoid the eyes of Wuji League, Supreme Lord also followed him into the soil. However, because of his large size, the place where the Supreme was located directly bulged up a hill of earth, which was very conspicuous. After being mentioned by Ragu, the Supreme glared at Ragu fiercely. Don't say what you shouldn't say, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Remember to light 2 incense sticks for Gaimei when you go back. If Gaimei comes back to life, maybe you will have a chance to work together. Supreme is right. Ragu didn't think of refuting at all, and praised the Supreme for his unique vision. Seeing this, the Supreme couldn't say much, so he could only put his eyes back to the position of Lufeng Valley. Originally, he thought that Gao Qiang would need his help in this decisive battle. But now it seems that there is no difference without him. The mortar bombardment lasted for a whole day and night. When the coalition feast ended and many families led their troops to Lufeng Valley was no longer there. Under the bombardment of the mortar, not to mention the flowers, plants, and trees that could not be left, even the peaks of the valley were cut off by 3 feet. As for living things, only charcoal was left all over the ground. While some of the family heads were still in a daze, others had already reacted quickly. They quickly turned around and looked at Gao Qiang, laughing and giving him a thumbs up. As expected of the head of the Gao family. Hurry up and pass it on. When the head of the Gao family comes, thunder and fire will rise from the sky and the earth, and the traitor will suffer terribly. Then the land got angry again, and saw that the ground was cut off by 3 points out of thin air, like a ground dragon passing through, sweeping all living things underground, and the millions of thieves were instantly wiped out. Hearing this, the remaining families also reacted quickly. They laughed and agreed with each other's words. What the Li clan leader said makes sense. The head of the Gao family is a god descended from heaven, and the traitors in the mortal world have already destroyed themselves without the head of the Gao family coming in person. Listening to the various families talking more and more outrageously, Gao Qiang couldn't help but move his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Is the high favorability really so outrageous? If it is passed on, it will not be a biography, but a myth. Why don't these people say that a meteorite fell from the sky and hit the ground, killing all the millions of troops of the Wuji League? So does he witness the birth of the rumor? However, as the rumor spread, the patriarch of a noble family seemed to react and turned to Gao Qiang and proposed. Now that the rebels have been eliminated, we must take His Majesty back to the capital as soon as possible. At first glance, it seems that there is no problem. But Gao Qiang saw that the other party's eyes were always on him. Good guy, which majesty is this talking about? However, after a little thought, Gao Qiang nodded and agreed to this decision. Now most of the main forces of the Wuji League were buried in Lufeng Valley by the new army and the clan protection army. Then send Wu Mei back to the imperial city, and then eliminate the last of the 3 officials, and his war goal in this war game will be completely achieved. In addition, Wu Mei still owed him a royal feast. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang looked at Wu Mei. Wu Mei looked puzzled. Let's go. Gao Qiang retracted his gaze and said to the other families of the coalition. Suddenly, everyone was overjoyed and hurried to lead the way. Master Gao is right, please come this way. The coalition army composed of hundreds of families arrived at the foot of the Dao imperial city. But what everyone didn't expect was that it was not a difficult siege war to greet them. There were no soldiers on the wall of the imperial city. Even the gate of the dynasty was open. At the moment when the coalition arrived, civil and military officials filed out of the city gate and bowed in the direction of the coalition. Welcome your majesty to the city. Wu Mei covered her mouth, as if she couldn't believe that under the manipulation of the 3 officials in the palace, she could still have such a huge influence in the court. Looking at this posture, the leader of the Wuji League who stayed in the imperial city must be in danger. Gao Qiang. At this moment, Lucia trotted to Gao Qiang and tugged at his pants. She seemed to want to remind Gao Qiang not to forget what she said 2 days ago. This Dao imperial city is not as simple as it seems. At least the existence that loosened the Panlong seal must not be the civil and military officials who went out of the city to welcome Gao Qiang. Be careful, don't let time really catch you, Lucia reminded in a low voice. She didn't want to be affected by Gao Qiang. According to the elders of the Dragon clan, the consequences of being targeted by time are far more terrible than death. I know, Gao Qiang responded in a low voice. When Lucia reminded Gao Qiang, Zhuoluo also pulled Sasha close to Gao Qiang's side. Do you think there is something wrong with the imperial city like Lucia? Gao Qiang asked Zhuoluo in a low voice. Zhuoluo shook his head. I believe that it is beyond one's ability to try to stop a car with a mantis arm. Sasha also nodded in agreement. And then he said, but there is no way, mantises eat insects, it would be bad if the Lord was eaten. Boom. There was a crisp sound on Sasha's forehead that had not sounded for a long time. Zhuoluo slowly retracted his fist and reminded. It is very impolite to speak for others. But Sasha had already said it, and Gao Qiang could only turn his face away with a frown on his face. Well, the awakening empire is a chariot moving forward, but I am a bug lying on the chariot, right? He has always been very supportive of the aggressiveness that Sasha unintentionally revealed in her words. It's just that the talent of a perfect diplomat is better used on outsiders. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang has entered the inner part of the imperial city surrounded by many noble families and civil and military officials. Walking on the streets of the imperial city. It's different from the bustling Zhaohuang city at the beginning. This is the first time Gao Qiang stepped into the imperial city by walking, and he clearly felt that the streets were a little scary. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 303. I don't know if it's because of the war that broke out in the dynasty. At this moment, the city is still filled with the smell of blood that has not yet dissipated. This smell of blood is more pungent than the smell of gunpowder in Lufeng Valley. Looking around again. On both sides of the quiet road, the doors of every house are locked. But there are always prying eyes between the windows, looking at Gao Qiang with inexplicable eyes, making Gao Qiang feel uncomfortable. As if seeing Gao Qiang's abnormality, some officials smiled secretly. After all, the imperial city has just experienced a bloody method. The people of this imperial city are afraid in the final analysis. They are afraid that Gao Qiang has ill intentions towards them, so they will carefully look at who is entering the city in secret. However, since Gao Qiang showed discomfort, they still can't just watch him like this. Suddenly, the civil and military officials came up with a good idea. A luxurious sedan chair was carried in front of Gao Qiang by dozens of sedan chair bearers. Then the internal historian stepped forward, opened the curtain of the sedan chair, and made a gesture of invitation to Gao Qiang. Master Gao has been serving the king day and night, and must be extremely tired. It is better to ride in the same sedan chair with His Majesty and have a good rest. After the internal historian finished speaking, the civil and military officials in the court also bowed. Please respectfully invite Master Gao to get on the sedan chair. Seeing this, it was hard to refuse the kindness, and Gao Qiang was embarrassed to refuse. As for the extremely tired mentioned by the internal historian, it was pure nonsense. From Zhaohuang City to Lufeng Valley, Gao Qiang has not had a hard battle, but he has eaten a lot of hard dishes. If you say that there is a banquet every 3 steps and a meal every 5 steps, then he is really tired. After sending Gao Qiang to the sedan chair, Wu Mei was quickly invited into the sedan chair by the civil and military officials. Then the internal historian lowered the curtain, instantly blocking all sights from the streets of the outside world. But at this point, there are only 2 people in the sedan chair. Gao Qiang and Wu Mei can only focus their eyes on each other. After a moment of silence, Wu Mei suddenly spoke, Master Gao, please don't forget our agreement. After getting rid of Chai Hong, the position of the 3 dukes can be taken by the Gao family, and my promise will still be valid. I understand. Gao Qiang nodded. But his eyes wandered to other directions. But now, how can we lure Chai Hong out? He was very sure that the person who had moved the Panlong seal in Lucia's mouth was Chai Hong, and Chai Hong must still be in this imperial city. But the other party was just as Wu Mei said, a dragon that could not be seen from head to tail, so Gao Qiang had no idea how to lure him out. Wu Mei remained silent. Of course, she understood what Gao Qiang said. Chai Hong was too weird, and even Gong Menquin's suicide note kept reminding him of his weirdness. In Gong Menquin's eyes, the person who had died 2 years ago was alive and well some time ago. Just thinking about it, Wu Mei would get goosebumps all over her body. If Ling Yanning hadn't died, she would have kept her distance from Chai Hong and wouldn't have thought of finding him out. Forget it. I'll arrange a welcoming banquet for you after we return to the palace. As she spoke, Wu Mei leaned her back against the side of the sedan and exhaled deeply, as if to relax her tense spirit. In the next period of time, I'll have to trouble Master Gao to accompany me in this imperial city for a while. But Master Gao, don't worry. I won't refuse anything the Gao family asks for. Wu Mei had said so much that even if Gao Qiang declared himself the 9,000-year-old in the next second, he would not be stopped. However, Gao Qiang rejected such an attractive condition. If he wanted, he would be close to ruling and winning now, and he didn't need to be the 9,000-year-old in the palace. But what he wanted in this war game was never victory. Seeing that Gao Qiang didn't ask for anything, Wu Mei fell into silence. Now she is alone. If she doesn't have anything that the other party can appreciate, it will be the most difficult thing to do. Time passed in silence between the two. Finally, the sedan stopped and was placed on the ground. Are we there? Wu Mei opened her mouth slightly and asked outside the sedan. But after waiting for a while, no one responded, and no one opened the curtain of the sedan. Wu Mei's face changed slightly, and she turned to Gao Qiang with a somewhat unpleasant look. The current situation made her think of a possibility. Could it be that the civil and military officials in the court have the intention of rebellion and want to kill you and me here? Wu Mei asked in a low voice. She deliberately lowered her voice to avoid being heard by the outside world. However, Gao Qiang shook his head. Impossible. In fact, Wu Mei's words are credible, because the civil and military officials in the court are not very loyal to Wu Mei. Gao Qiang can even see that some people have secretly pledged allegiance to him with a favorability of 60 points. In other words, the loyalty of some of them to Wu Mei is actually below the passing line. But even if they did, it would be impossible to do it in his presence. Besides, there were Zhuluo and others outside, as well as the major families, and even the new army and the clan protection army following behind. With 3 layers of protection inside and outside, he should be safe. But after waiting for a while, there was still no sound from the outside. At this moment, Gao Qiang also truly felt the absurdity that Lucia said. After entering the dynasty, it seemed that something was wrong. I'll go check it out. Wu Mei stood up, drew the long sword from her waist, and carefully opened the door curtain. However, the moment she saw the outside world, Wu Mei was stunned. How could it be? Wu Mei covered her mouth, and the long sword in her hand fell to the ground without her knowing it. Seeing this, Gao Qiang simply opened the door curtain completely and saw the outside world. The two were not in the palace at all, but in the royal forbidden area. As for the dozens of sedan chair bearers, they were all gone at this moment. Even in the royal forbidden area in front of them, the demon tower disappeared. Instead, there was a statue. A statue of Ling Yanning. This was also the reason why Wu Mei behaved so badly. Ling why is there a statue of Ling here? If she remembered correctly, this was the location of the demon tower. Suddenly, a voice came from under the statue. This is the statue you ordered to be built for her, have you forgotten? Chai Hong. Hearing the familiar voice, Wu Mei looked at the source of the voice with anger on her face. Under the statue of Ling Yanning, a stone table appeared at some point. And Chai Hong was sitting on one side of the stone table, sipping tea. When he heard Wu Mei calling him, Chai Hong put on a kind smile and turned his head. Welcome back, Your Majesty. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Me Shi Di. Chapter 304. Wu Mei frowned. What do you mean? In that case, let me explain it to your Majesty. Chai Hong put down the teacup in his hand, stood up and walked under the statue. As your Majesty knows, this was once the location of the demon suppression tower. And you, with the essence and blood of 100 dragons, personally ended the traces of the Yuchan Empire's existence, making the Panlong Great Seal a lost object that can no longer suppress Dao's national destiny. After that, the three princes will all die, and you will officially ascend the throne as the co-lord of the world, and use the great power of heaven and earth to upgrade Dao. This great martial emperor seal in my old minister's hand is a symbol of what you have done. While speaking, Chai Hong took out the imperial seal, and saw that the imperial seal was directly out of Chai Hong's control and slowly flew into Wu Mei's hand. Holding this brand new imperial seal in her hand, Wu Mei only felt that it was extremely hot. I've never done any of these things. No, of course you did. Chai Hong interrupted Wu Mei and looked here with his white eyes. Is it the past, the present, or the future? Your Majesty, do you believe in destiny? As soon as these words came out, they successfully ignited the anger in Wu Mei's heart. So you treat Ling as a chess piece in your hand, just for the sake of destiny? No, no, no. Chai Hong slowly shook his head. Your Majesty, you have made a mistake about the relationship between you and the Ling family and me. If it weren't for the veteran, you and Ling Yanning would never have the chance to meet each other. What did you say? Wu Mei's mouth opened slightly, as if she realized something. Chai Hong smiled slightly, then, Your Majesty, let me tell you a story about you. In the story told by Chai Hong, Wu Mei did not get the support of the Ling family, and she never recognized Ling Yanning. She did not rebelliously travel around the mountains and rivers, searching for clues about San Gong. Instead, he stayed in the Dao Palace, learning the ways of being a king from Gongmen Quan, and treating Chai Hong as his grandfather. Everything was so peaceful, Dao's national power was growing day by day, and no soldiers died due to the turmoil. Until Chai Hong Shao died, Wu Mei also ushered in the end of her life more than 10 years later, and passed the throne to the next heir. There were no surprises. It seemed that that was the path Wu Mei should take. So, what's going on now? Wu Mei stared at Chai Hong, as if she wanted an explanation. Because of me, Chai Hong said decisively. I have been in Dao for more than 80 years and have spent my whole life in Dao. Your Majesty, including your parents, are all children I have watched grow up. I have used my whole life to repay the kindness of the Wuji Alliance for raising me for 18 years, and I have nothing to do with the Wuji League since then. Then after I die, I will at least do something for Dao. So I discovered that the culprit who hindered Dao was none other than the three nobles in the palace, the old minister himself. Looking at Wu Mei, Chai Hong seemed to have an expression of reminiscence. Your Majesty, do you know why you have been assassinated since you were a child? Wu Mei was stunned. Why? Because of me. I was aware of my existence when I was alive, and he knew that only by killing you could he end this wrong time. And the Ling family is my tool to protect you. You have felt it too. Since 2 years ago, you have never been assassinated again. Because at that time, it happened to be the day when the old minister died. Listening to Chai Hong's words, the look of horror on Wu Mei's face became more intense. Now that Chai Hong has revealed his plan, everything makes sense. So, everyone is your pawn, and you calculated everything for your promotion. That's not to say everything. Chai Hong glanced at Gao Qiang, who was eating melon on the side. At least the Gao family shouldn't exist. It seems that there was an accident somewhere that caused the Wuji Alliance to interfere with the trajectory of the world. But in the end, everything fell into place. While talking, Chai Hong took out a dagger and walked slowly towards Wu Mei. There are no two masters in a country, just as there are no 2 days in the sky. Now I have created the best environment for you. The dagger was handed to Wu Mei's hand by Chai Hong. Then Chai Hong pointed at Gao Qiang. Kill him, and you can go back and regain the throne. After you are promoted, even the Wuji alliance will no longer be able to interfere with you. At that time, Dao will be truly free. And I, old minister, can rest in peace under the spring. Why does the topic keep getting brought back to me? It felt like the atmosphere on the court was not quite right. Gao Qiang got off the sedan and took a few steps back. In this current situation, he seems to have arrived at a certain point in time in the royal forbidden area. No one expected Chai Hong to have such an ability. Therefore, neither Shasha and others nor Haituanzi followed, and Gao Qiang didn't know whether Genman was still protecting him. In addition, Gao Qiang himself has almost no combat power, and he can only use the Jingzhao obtained through the 4th level miracle path. However, there are only 9 marks left, and Gao Qiang is not sure whether it will be effective on Wu Mei or Chai Hong. However, at this time, before Gao Qiang could use Jiao Zhao, Wu Mei took the dagger and suddenly became violent and stabbed the dagger into Chai Hong's heart. Enough! Gasps for air, Wu Mei stares at the blood gushing out of Chai Hong's heart, staining her hands. I've always treated you as my grandfather. Wu Mei trembles as she speaks. At least once, I treated you as my grandfather. She takes out the dagger, and the amount of blood that bleeds like a fountain directly stains Wu Mei's clothes even more red. But no matter what excuses and reasons you have, you shouldn't treat Linger as your chess piece, let alone Da Wu as your chessboard. I'd rather live a peaceful life and die like you said, rather than watching my relatives and friends die one by one and living a truly lonely life. As she speaks, 2 lines of tears fall from Wu Mei's eyes. If possible, I'd rather Linger never knew me and live her own life. A trembling old arm is raised to wipe away the tears from Wu Mei's eyes. Wu Mei raised her head in shock, only to see Chai Hong looking at her kindly. Your Majesty, you have grown up too. The old arm slowly drooped, and Chai Hong gradually lost his vitality. But at this moment, behind Ling Yanning's statue, another figure walked out again. Chai Hong, alive again. The returning Chai Hong continued, but Your Majesty, you are destined to become the Lord of Dao, and this is how it should be. Why don't you turn around and take a look? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 305. After listening to Chai Hong's words, Wu Mei turned around stiffly. Gao Qiang also followed Wu Mei's gaze. But I saw it outside the royal forbidden area. Numerous people, including civil and military officials, imperial guards, and civilians, gathered there, and everyone knelt on the ground in piety. Long live my emperor! Listening to the voice shouting long live in her ears, Wu Mei's body became even stiffer. Taking advantage of the moment, Chai Hong once again pointed his finger in Gao Qiang's direction. Your Majesty, if you kill him, you will be the co-owner of the world, and now this is your future scene. Only after you kill him and rest your eyes can you leave here and return to your own time. Will your future be like this? Seeing the figures kneeling down together, Wu Mei fell silent. Respect, those people respect themselves from the bottom of their hearts. But there is a distant gap in the middle. No one dared to set foot in the forbidden area, no one dared to approach her. Everyone was blocked by this barrier, and only he, a lonely man, stayed under Linger's statue to mourn. Is this loneliness really what she wants? But if she didn't want this loneliness, how could she leave here? Unintentionally, Wu Mei cast her pleading eyes on Gao Qiang. What do I do? Ask me this question? Seeing this, Gao Qiang simply turned his back on himself and pointed his finger in the direction of Chai Hong, launching a corrective edict. Next, you will no longer have the ability to be resurrected, and you will no longer be able to travel before and after the timeline. When you die, you will close your eyes forever and no longer have any concern for this world. Because he didn't know the means of Chai Hong's resurrection, Gao Qiang could only tell all his guesses at once. And after finishing this long list, the accumulating potential mark dropped directly by 8, leaving only the last one alone. Seeing that the Jiao Zhao had taken effect, Gao Qiang looked at Chai Hong nervously, and at the same time called Wu Mei on the side, "Find a way to kill him again. If Chai Hong can be resurrected this time, then he doesn't know if he still has a chance to launch the next corrective edict." But what can be seen is, after Gao Qiang launched the correctional edict, Chai Hong was already stunned on the spot, constantly asking why in the empty sky. I don't know who he is asking, let alone what he is asking about. However, Wu Mei stepped forward quickly and stabbed the dagger given by Chai Hong into his chest again. Blood spurted out, but when Wu outside the forbidden area just raised his head slightly and remained silent. The feeling of life passing by brought Chai Hong back from his daze. Only this time, his expression was a little strange. He turned his head stiffly to Gao Qiang's position. Chai Hong showed an expression that was not kind, but even a little strange. It's you, I see you. No. Gao Qiang really couldn't stand it. Who are the people in this Wuji alliance? Last time I killed Gongxing Zhan by myself, so it's okay to be marked. This Chai Hong didn't kill himself, so why should he be blamed on himself? But the matter was over, and without giving Gao Qiang a chance to defend himself, Chai Hong fell down again. But this time, it seemed that the edict had worked. Chai Hong was not resurrected, and the forbidden area fell into deathly silence. Clang! The dagger falls. Wu Mei collapsed on the ground, letting the pool of blood cover her. Just now, she personally killed the old man who had watched her grow up. This time, he may not come back. Even though she knew that Chai Hong had passed away long ago, it took Wu Mei a long time to recover from her loss. Are you okay? Gao Qiang stepped forward and helped Wu Mei up from the ground. To be honest, if Wu Mei had just chosen Chai Hong and attacked him, he wouldn't know what to do. Unfortunately, Chai Hong still misjudged the future. His method of playing with emotions hurt Wu Mei too deeply, so the first person Wu Mei chose to get rid of was him. After being helped by Gao Qiang to stand up from the ground, Wu Mei subconsciously wrapped her clothes a little tighter. So what do we do now? Wu Mei glanced outside the forbidden area. Because the outside of the forbidden area was surrounded by those strange civil and military officials, Gao Qiang and Wu Mei did not dare to leave the forbidden area casually. So I could only watch Chai Hong's body become stiffer and stiffer, waiting from sunset to sunrise. Until the sun hit their faces. Patriarch Gao. Your Majesty. Nei shook his body forward and woke up Gao Qiang fiercely. Wu Mei on the side also had the same reaction. Shasha poked her little head out of the door curtain of the sedan, and asked incredulously, "Lord, you two actually fell asleep after such a short journey." Besides, the Lord slept so well that he couldn't wake up even if he shouted outside. He had to be shaken to wake up. Are you sleeping? Gao Qiang turned his head and looked at Wu Mei, both seeing clues in each other's eyes. It was obvious that both of them had experienced the scene just now. At this moment, Wu Mei noticed something hidden in her waist. Take things out of your waist. After seeing the appearance of that thing, Gao Qiang and Wu Mei were stunned. Great Emperor Seal, miracle. Isn't that thing the imperial seal of the Dao dynasty, and it was actually brought back by Wu Mei? However, this also proves that the encounter between the two of them and Chai Hong just now was a real event, not an imaginary dream. At the same time, this also proves that what Chai Hong said was destined was not really destined at all. Otherwise, Wu Mei would not have been able to return to her own time node without killing Gao Qiang. Suddenly, Wu Mei covered her mouth and chuckled twice. Gao Qing, what do you think I should do next? Hearing Wu Mei's sudden change of address, Gao Qiang seemed to understand what Wu Mei meant. Since fate is not destined, since he doesn't like the future of being a lonely person, then why not take control of his fate again? And Gao Qiang, who subverted the three officials in the palace all the way, was naturally regarded by Wu Mei as her direct line and a trustworthy existence. Well, it seems that she has forgotten that she was thrown into the sky prison by herself, although it was not her intention. Gao Qiang rubbed his chin and thought secretly. But he didn't plan to use Wu Mei's trust to plot against Dao. Since Wuji League has been taught a lesson, it is time for him to leave. Compared to victory, it seems that there is something new to try this time. Gao Qiang looked at the Great Martial Emperor seal in Wu Mei's hand. Great Martial Emperor seal, miracle. Introduction: all four directions bow their heads, all people support, the Emperor has martial arts, and the destiny is in his hands. Effect 1, when using the Great Martial Emperor seal, except for the Great Martial Emperor seal, the effects of all Jade seals on the scene will be invalid, and all users of Jade seals from other dynasties will suffer backlash. Effect 2, when ascending the throne with the Great Martial Emperor seal, this world will be upgraded and this war game will end. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 306. Chai Hong seemed to have really done something. Even at this point in time, the suppression of the Great Wu Kingdom by the Demon Suppression Tower no longer existed. And it just so happened that Gao Qiang had never witnessed the upgrade of that world. Next, Your Majesty will go to the throne again, Gao Qiang said casually. Again. Wu Mei's eyes moved slightly, and an inexplicable expression flashed across her eyes. In that case, then I will listen to Gao Qing's arrangement. Set up the Demon Suppression Tower. The location of the Demon Suppression Tower is the Royal Forbidden Area, and it also has the largest open space in the entire Imperial City. This open space is enough to accommodate all civil and military officials, plus most of the guards and the people in the city. Therefore, in addition to ancestor worship, the Forbidden Area is indeed a good place to ascend the throne. It's just that when Wu Mei ascended the throne, she didn't make such a big scene. She just took the jade seal from the coffin of the late emperor, and it was considered to have completed the enthronement ceremony. Recalling the late emperor who died of old age, Wu Mei's eyes dimmed slightly. I'm afraid that my father and mother will never realize in their lifetime that the jade seal they hold is actually the existence that suppresses the fate of the Great Wu Kingdom. The real Great Wu Emperor seal has always been in the hands of the three ministers in the palace. Suddenly, Zhu Luo's voice came from outside the door curtain, interrupting Wu Mei's memories. Lord, don't you plan to rest here for a while? Gao Qiang turned his head and found that Zhu Luo was staring at him, as if he wanted to see some emotions from his face. The next moment, Zhu Luo turned his head to look at Wu Mei. Next, I plan to accompany the Lord. Your Majesty should have no objection, right? Wu Mei's eyes flashed with an inexplicable light, but she soon smiled faintly. Please. Because they were going to the Forbidden Area again, Gao Qiang had no need to leave the sedan chair. He continued to sit in the sedan chair with Wu Mei for a while. But he heard a panicked voice from the outside world. Quick, quick to protect the emperor. From the sound, it sounded like the royal guards in the palace. At this moment, the internal historian opened the door curtain and entered the sedan chair apologetically. Master Gao and Your Majesty, I am really sorry. I don't know where the traitor came from to mess up the Forbidden Area. Do you think the date of the coronation should be postponed for a few days? From the gap in the door curtain, Gao Qiang saw the chaos in the Forbidden Area. It was not that there was an enemy ambush. But around the Demon Suppression Tower, there were hundreds of corpses of dragon lords. The dragon heads of those dragon lords were chopped off and stacked on the demon suppression tower layer by layer. The bloodshed made the demon suppression tower extremely dim. And outside the demon suppression tower, dozens of bronze figurines covered in blood were kneeling towards the sedan chair where Gao Qiang and Wu Mei were. Looking at this scene, Gao Qiang felt an inexplicable sense of absurdity. Why did Chai Hong know that the sedan chair came from this direction? What if he actually saw the future of being killed by himself and Wu Mei? So is the Gao family the variable he mentioned, or is it destined to exist? Gao Qing, what's wrong with you? Wu Mei's voice brought Gao Qiang back to his senses. Turning his head to look at Wu Mei, Gao Qiang found that Wu Mei seemed to care more and more about him since the conversation with Chai Hong. Well, it's not just Wu Mei. Zhu Luo also looked at him with a caring attitude, but he was a little used to it. I'm fine. Gao Qiang shook his head. It can only be said that these people in the Wuji League are too weird. If possible, Gao Qiang really doesn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. It seems that Gao Qiang's expression can see the embarrassment. Wu Mei stood up from the sedan chair and said to the internal historian, "There is no need to choose a day. I think today is very good. Is it not worthy of the name of an auspicious day to celebrate the first of 100 dragons?" The internal historian opened his mouth and glanced at Gao Qiang. Seeing that Gao Qiang didn't say anything, he didn't persuade him anymore. Turning around, Wu Mei asked Gao Qiang, "So, Mr. Gao, are you willing to accompany me to this coronation ceremony?" Gao Qiang did not refuse, and stood up and walked out of the sedan with Wu Mei. At this moment, the forbidden area was filled with countless tall figures. Among them were civil and military officials, as well as aristocratic families. Similarly, the new army and the clan protection army brought by Gao Qiang also occupied a corner in the forbidden area. Above the sky, there was also a huge figure of a giant beast in the sky breaking through the clouds and covering the entire sky above the forbidden area with thousands of sky boats. Now Gao Qiang and Wu Mei appeared together. Civil and military officials and the patriarchs of the major families knelt down. "Please ascend the throne, Your Majesty." Just then, the prompt of the war game came. "You have obtained the secret loyalty of more than 80% of the cities in this war game. Have you achieved the goal, ruling victory?" Looking at the prompt from the war game. "No," Gao Qiang said without hesitation. He actually understood that the cities that secretly pledged allegiance to him were definitely not as many as 80%. The remaining cities should all be the credit of the Wuji League's rule over the years. The Wuji League distributed part of its authority to the aristocratic families in various places in order to disperse its influence to a certain extent and avoid accidentally achieving a victory in rule. Now Gao Qiang and the Wuji League are both human beings. Gao Qiang also gained the secret loyalty of several large cities and the imperial city along the way, which just met the conditions for a victory in rule. However, what Gao Qiang wanted in this game was not just victory. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang turned his head and gave Wu Mei an affirmative look. "Then I will go." Wu Mei walked towards the demon suppression tower holding the great martial emperor seal. The civil and military officials in the court kept kneeling, lowered their heads and faced Wu Mei's jade feet passing in front of them. Most of them have sworn a secret loyalty to Gao Qiang. Therefore, as long as Gao Qiang did not object, even if Wu Mei wanted to ascend the throne a few more times, there would be no problem. Walked all the way to the steps in front of the demon suppression tower. Only then did Wu Mei turn around and waved her sleeves. Her fiery red long skirt was like a phoenix spreading its wings, reflecting Wu Mei's noble aura. In a trance, Gao Qiang seemed to see the emperor's figure in the picture when he first entered the game, slowly overlapping with Wu Mei. Until Wu Mei raised the great martial emperor seal in her hand. "Mandated by heaven, long life and eternal prosperity." Boom. As Wu Mei said this, the world shook. Amid the horrified eyes of the civil and military officials, a dark crack tore open in the sky. Hiding in the arms of the skeleton lord, Lucia opened her mouth in surprise. Actually, it really started. It was also the first time for her to witness the world's upgrading. In the past, she could only hear about such things from the stories of her elders. But as the crack in the sky became larger and larger, the jade seal in Wu Mei's hand flashed with golden light, pulling the grand national destiny up into the sky, and showing auspicious scenes at the crack. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 307. Due to the upgrade of this world, all lords in this war game will be forced to settle. The reminder of the war game came. The G family, who were far away in the bitter cold land preparing for the next hard battle, were stunned at this moment. Actually, it's over, Ji Qinghua stopped dispatching troops, his eyes full of disbelief. It's over, Ji Shun responded silently on the side, proving that the reminder Ji Qinghua just saw was not an illusion. Speaking of which, are we missing someone? Ji Lingxian felt that something seemed to be wrong. So he looked at Ji Lenjiao, little sister, do you know? Hearing Ji Lingxuan's question, Ji Lenjiao pointed at the three brothers and sisters one by one. 1, 2, 3, count as 4 of me, not less. That's good, Ji Lingxian nodded. At this moment, in the sea far away in the eastern region of the Great Wu Empire, Ji Bixian, who was drifting on the ocean, sneezed. Achoo! Shaking off his clothes that were soaked in sea water and shivering with cold, Ji Bixian couldn't help but curse, which little bastard is talking about me behind my back? Speaking of which, are there really relics in the sea that can break the situation? Achoo! Sneezed again, and Ji Bixian took out a blueprint from his hand and took a look. This blueprint is also a strange item, which can give a coordinate with unknown meaning according to the user's question. And the question raised by Ji Bixian is exactly the way to break the situation facing the Wuji League. It's just that he has been drifting in the sea area in the far east of the Dao dynasty for a long time, and he hasn't found anything. This makes Ji Bixian a little suspicious, whether there are some underwater relics hidden under the sea. However, before Ji Bixian can continue to think, the whole person disappears from the war world. He is not the first person to be settled and left, nor the last one. In addition to Ji Bixian, the lord of the Ji family, the lord of the undead, or many living foreign lords have also entered the settlement stage. In the forbidden area, Lucia also disappeared in an instant. Gao Qiang wanted to stay and watch for a while, but the war game didn't give him a chance. You have entered the settlement stage. With a violent vibration of heaven and earth, the entire world containing the Dao dynasty disappeared in place, leaving only a deep and incomparable void. In the royal forbidden area, after the upgrade, Wu Mei immediately put down the jade seal in her hand and turned her head to look down the steps. Gao Qing, I am now back on the throne, do you remember what I promised you? Whether it is a royal banquet or the position of the three officials, the Gao family can take what I promised now. Halfway through the words, Wu Mei's voice paused, and the corners of her mouth that had just been raised slowly fell. But Gao Qiang and Zhu Luo were no longer seen in the sedan chair. Not only that. In the royal forbidden area, the figures of the new army and the clan protection army also disappeared one by one. In the settlement stage, the traces left by the lords in this world seemed to disappear. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came from the steps. Quick, run away. Something is falling from the sky. Wu Mei looked up at the sky, and saw a row of empty sky boats slowly falling down. Of course, those sky boats were nothing. What was really frightening was the huge beast in the sky. Because of its large size, even if it fell slowly, it gave people the illusion that the sky was about to collapse. Your Majesty's body is important, run away with me. At this time, several people among the 9 ministers rushed to Wu Mei and wanted to take her away. No, I'm not going anywhere today. Looking at the beast in the sky that was getting closer and closer to her, Wu Mei was puzzled. Why? Why are the traces of the Gao family disappearing little by little in this world? recalling the scene she saw from Chai Hong. If the Gao family disappeared, her future would probably be just like the future she saw, without any change. Why? Wu Mei gritted her teeth. Chai Hong himself said that the Gao family was a variable. But why did this happen now? Is the future really destined? Destined, why did the so-called destiny that killed Linger appear in front of her again? Bold. Suddenly, Wu Mei heard a cry of surprise in her ear. Then she felt an old hand touching her head. Looking up, it was an old man she didn't know at all. No, Wu Mei suddenly remembered that he had met her once in the Gao family. It seems that his name is Gao Yuan. Your Majesty. Gao Yuan spoke slowly at this moment. His voice was very light, but for some reason it was convincing. Open your eyes and take a look. Your worries are actually no longer there. As for my work, I will give it as a gift to your Majesty for his enthronement. After that, Gao Yuan's figure turned into a cloud of white smoke and dissipated. Immortal, is it an immortal? The guards who rushed to Wu Mei were stunned, watching Gao Yuan disappearing, at a loss. Or someone among the 9 ministers had a quick mind. The immortal touched your head, your Majesty has a sign of longevity, and the great Wu has a sign of good fortune. Naturally, Wu Mei didn't hear these words. Her eyes were now completely focused on the open space. There, the empty sky beasts and sky boats were neatly arranged. In the future that Chai Hong saw, she would definitely not have this thing. Does that mean that the gears of fate have already rolled in another direction? Gao Qiang naturally didn't know what happened after Wu Mei ascended the throne. At this moment, Gao Qiang was staying in a completely dark space, watching the war game quickly calculate the final settlement. Since you have 5,000 war contributions, your contributions will be converted into 500 war coins. Because the whole game was a civil war, Gao Qiang didn't have any traders or anything like that, so the war coins he got in the end were naturally pitiful. Among them, 5,000 war contributions were contributed by Lucia and several unlucky Naga lords. Even because Lucia was still alive, the war contributions that could be obtained were greatly discounted. This settlement passed quickly. Then, it was the items that Gao Qiang could take out of this war game. The inventory that used to be full of items is now empty. It's empty, leaving Gao Qiang no chance to choose. This is probably because the world has been upgraded. Gao Qiang glanced at the dark void. The location of the Dao dynasty is no longer here, so naturally everything in it has disappeared. Then, in the end, it is the final land plundering stage. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang suddenly realized something. Oh no, the place where he originally entered this war game was above the clouds of Haikan, right? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 308. Master, Master. When he came back to his senses again, Gao Qiang found himself back in the Ji family's house. And a large group of servants had surrounded him, looking at the wet Ji Baxian with worried faces. Dad, you are still alive. The originally heartwarming scene fell into silence because of Ji Lenjiao's extremely surprised words. Ji Baxian's face darkened. You little bastard, you are looking forward to your father's death so that you can inherit the family business, right? Lalilal. After returning to his home, Ji Lenjiao became much more lively. He stuck out his tongue at Ji Baxian and immediately hid behind his third brother Ji Shun. Ji Shun could only glance at Gao Qiang's position helplessly. Dad, there are other people watching. After realizing that there was an outsider named Gao Qiang next to him, Ji Baxian coughed twice and his face returned to calm. I'm so sorry for being so out of control. Just when Ji Baxian said this, Gao Qiang felt a violent shaking beside him. The servant standing at the door suddenly looked a little ugly. It's the sea of clouds that is shaking. Master, come and have a look outside. Not good. Ji Baxian seemed to realize something and hurried to go out. Gao Qiang also walked out of the door with Ji Bixian. However, as soon as he walked out of the door, he saw countless lands and vegetation penetrating the sea of clouds. The scene of flying sand and rocks above 10,000 feet was really shocking. If it weren't for Heiken's own special mechanism. Once these lands were incorporated into the G family, it would be enough to tear the G family's house into pieces. Damn it! Ji Bixian looked at the scene and clenched his fists in hatred. It can't be hidden, it can't be hidden at all. With the mechanism and openness of the Sea of Clouds, as long as the war is won and the land is plundered, it will basically be seen by others. In most cases, this is fine. Because in Heiken, every time someone enters the war game, they will first report to the major forces, and then choose a location on the ground to enter. The G family entered suddenly this time. On the one hand, they did not report, and they entered the war game directly from the Sea of Clouds, which was equivalent to breaking the rules of Heiken. Some rules cannot be broken. If the rules are broken, even if the G family has a high influence in Heiken, I am afraid that others will no longer be able to accommodate the G family. What a good plan, what a good plan. Standing behind Ji Bixian, Ji Shun had guessed the intention of the Wuji League. Sending us into the world they control is already a must-kill intention. And sending us from the Sea of Clouds, even if we have a 1 in 10,000 chance of coming back alive, we will be wanted by Heiken because of the land we have obtained. This Wuji League actually bullied my Ji family to such a state. Just as Ji Shun's voice fell. Vehicles have descended from the clouds in all directions, and they are about to surround the Ji family. Yunda Technology, Wuta City, Beja Changjiun. Looking at the signs of different forces, Ji Bixian read out the forces they represent with an ugly face. All those present are well-known figures in Heiken. Logically speaking, even if they want to punish the Ji family, they will not come so quickly, let alone mobilize so many people. Unless they already know that the Ji family has entered the war world in the Sea of Clouds. As expected, after everyone arrived, the first person to get off the vehicle was Gongxin Yushin, who had not been seen for a long time. But this time Gongxin Yushin's expression was not good. Scanning from Gao Qiang and several leaders of the Ji family. He couldn't see what was special about this group of people, so that they could survive and walk out of the war world that Wuji League had developed for 100 years. But now is not the time to consider these issues. Gongxin Yushin turned around and bowed to the vehicle behind him and said, "Chairman Songrao, you have also seen that every word I said is true." The Ji family ignored the laws of Heiken and entered the war game from the Sea of Clouds without any reporting, attempting to destroy the foundation of Heiken. Such a bad behavior cannot be appeased without severe punishment. Hearing this, several people from the Ji family looked at Gongxin Yushin with anger on their faces. If Gongxin Yushin had not taken out a powerful aid order from somewhere, how could they have entered the war game from the Sea of Clouds? But standing next to Gongxin Yushin at this moment is the Sea of Clouds Committee, which is also the law enforcement agency of Heiken. The Sea of Clouds Committee is not large in number, but it is composed of the top scattered lords of Heiken. Once they encounter a problem related to the foundation of the Sea of Clouds, they will be united, and even the forces that can freely deploy the 5th level battlefield will have to temporarily avoid the itch. So every word Ji Bixian said must be said with caution. Otherwise, the Ji family will be doomed. Sure enough, it was just as Ji Bixian thought. After listening to Gongxin Yushin's speech, a man in a suit got off the vehicle. He looked at the Ji family coldly and asked, "Is it really as he said? It's obviously all his fault, you still want to blame us?" Ji Lenjiao couldn't help but curse out loud, looking at Songrao angrily. "You can't tell right from wrong, what kind of chairman are you? Little sister, shut up." A scolding voice came from the side. Ji Lenjiao turned her head in disbelief, only to find that her 3 brothers and sisters were all looking at her with blaming eyes. "You guys." Ji Lenjiao stamped her feet in anger, and ran behind Gao Qiang in a huff. But this time, no one would let her temper go. Alas! Jibaxian sighed and bowed to the sky. Mr. Chairman, the G family did enter the war game from the sea of clouds, and we have no excuse. But there are reasons for this, and I hope the chairman will see clearly. See clearly, Song Rao looked at Jibaxian with sharp eyes. The committee has always only looked at the results, not the process. If everyone is like the G family, entering the war game from the sea of clouds through the hands of others, then how many days can the sea of clouds under our feet exist? As expected, after hearing this, the representatives of the surrounding forces looked at the G family with the wrong look. In just a few words, he convicted the G family of a crime. He is indeed a member of the committee. Gong Xingyuan watched the scene coldly, and his mouth gradually curled up. He wanted to see who could protect Gao Qiang and the G family this time. However, at this moment, a smiling voice came from the side. The committee is really overbearing, but I don't know if they can give us a face. Who? Song Rao frowned and looked. Gao Qiang received a message from his friend list. Leave it to me. If you touch our people, we will hold a grudge. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 309. Following Song Rao's vision, Ixier's figure appeared on the other side of the sea of clouds. At the same time, Wenzi, who had been promoted to the Son of God, also followed Ixier, vaguely with the intention of respecting Ixier. What Gao Qiang didn't expect was that Yana was actually mixed with Ixier. Seeing Gao Qiang's eyes, Ixier smiled, stretched out his hand to pinch Yana's face, and then pushed Yana towards Gao Qiang. I've kept your girlfriend for you, thank me dear. Girlfriend. Gao Qiang was full of black lines, not knowing whether he should tell Ixier that Yana was actually a man. But he glanced at Yana's face. Yana's face was already red. No, you blush like a bubble teapot. Gao Qiang looked at Yana in disbelief. He had read hundreds of scriptures, but he was still a pure male elf who would blush when he met a girl. It was really out of line. Enough, this kind of serious occasion is not the place for you to flirt. Song Rao spoke with dissatisfaction, interrupting the exchange of glances between the few people. Among them, he was somewhat dissatisfied because of the tone of Asher when he appeared, which showed that he did not take him seriously. Since you asked me to give you face, then you should at least tell me who you are, right? After hearing Song Rao's question, Ixier turned his head and looked at Song Rao with a smile. Ixier, the new son of the saint. Wenzi also followed Asher to introduce himself. Wenzi, the new son of the saint. After hearing the word saint, Song Rao's face changed several times. Since the plane coordinate point is very close to Heiken, Song Rao has heard of the name of the saint. The forces that can lay out the 6th level battlefield are definitely well-known figures in the surrounding coordinates. In theory, a strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. No matter how strong this force is, it cannot interfere in the affairs of Heiken. But the saints are an exception. If the Wuji League is a dog that bites but doesn't bark, then the saints are mad dogs that bite and bark. Beat the young ones and the old ones will come, beat the old ones and the young ones will grow up again. Because several saints died, the saints are still fighting with the plane of the Kabbalah system of the elves. This matter is a hot topic and everyone knows it. Even if you are a saint, it's a bit too much to interfere in the affairs of my Heiken, right? Song Rao wanted to appeal to his emotions, but was interrupted by Ixier. Ixier raised his head and raised it to Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang immediately understood what Ixier meant, and directly introduced himself. The new saint, son of the saint, honorary professor of the college, Gao Qiang. It has to be said that sometimes identity is useful when you are out. After hearing 2 names in a row, Songro's expression was obviously a little relaxed. Although the emperor is guilty of the same crime as the common people, Gao Qiang and the Ji family have not failed, and Yunhai has not suffered any losses. So in this case, it seems that there is no problem to let him off the hook. It is definitely not because he is afraid of the Mad Dog Saint or afraid of offending the academy. In this case. Wait a minute. Gong Xinyushan suddenly interrupted Song Rao, staring at Gao Qiang. In any case, it is an indisputable fact that the other party entered the war game from Yunhai. If the chairman lets him off the hook now, I am afraid that the whole Heikan will be chilled. It's this guy again. Gao Qiang secretly clenched his fists. It's also a good thing that Gong Xinyushan didn't enter the Dao dynasty, otherwise Gao Qiang would have punched him in the face twice. He deserved a beating. But it was Gong Xinyushan's words that made Song Rao a little embarrassed. At this moment, Song Rao was a little hesitant. Gong Xinyushan even said this. If he still lets them off, wouldn't that be a direct message to the entire Heikan that their committee is afraid of the saints? How would Heikan view them, and how would the other members of the committee view him? What no one noticed was. At this moment, Yena's eyes flashed red, as if he had more evil. Gao Qiang had been in the war game for such a long time, if Satan did nothing, wouldn't he be unworthy of the name of the devil? But before Song Rao was about to speak, the representatives of the surrounding forces seemed to have received some instructions, and one by one began to plead for Gao Qiang and the Ji family. Didn't the Ji family say that it was not their intention to enter the war game from Yunhai this time? What's wrong with making concessions once? Yes, in my opinion, instead of making things difficult for the Ji family, it's better to find out who planned this drama. Don't let it become a case of the thief crying catch thief. Gong Xinyushan's face suddenly darkened. If you look at the process instead of the result, he, the culprit who sent everyone into the war game, is the one who should be arrested the most. Song Rao was also slightly moved at this moment. Because he saw that most of the people who were pleading for the Ji family were well-known figures in Heikan. Most of these people had no friendship with the Ji family, so it was reasonable that they should not jump out to speak for the Ji family now. However, seeing that more and more people were speaking for the Ji family, Song Rao had to stop them in a hurry. If the situation continued to develop, it might be beyond his control. Therefore, Song Rao immediately began to smooth things over. The committee has always adhered to the principles of fairness, justice, and openness. Since most people think that the Ji family's behavior is not enough to convict, then this matter will be over. After saying that, Song Rao took the vehicle and left directly. As for catching the culprit, he never mentioned it. Seeing that the people of the committee had left, the remaining families were too lazy to bother themselves with the Ji family. How fast they came, how fast they left. In an instant, the sea of clouds near the Ji family fell into the tranquility of the past. However, at this moment, Ji Baxian naturally did not dare to neglect it, and hurriedly invited Aisier and others in. Just when Yana passed by Gao Qiang directly pulled Yana and quietly took her to a corner. Did you arrange those people just now? Gao Qiang couldn't help asking. Before others spoke for Gao Qiang, the red light flashed in Yana's eyes, which was caught by Gao Qiang. Facing Gao Qiang's question, Yana nodded with a red face. How did you do it? Gao Qiang was even more curious. So many powerful forces on the human side could actually be controlled by Yana, an elf. Facing Gao Qiang's questioning like digging into the root of the matter. Yana shyly put his hand into his clothes and took out a storybook from his chest. Yes, I secretly filmed some of their secrets. The chairman of Yunda Technology secretly raised a sucker octopus, the mayor of Wuta City soaked the root in the poison pool out of curiosity, and there were also Luhan Dharma Assembly, the blessing party. I secretly filmed the secrets of those people, and Satan backed them up more than 100 times. At that time, I told them that if they didn't help me, I would send these contents to their relatives and then put them on the Hyken network for looping playback. Killing people and destroying their hearts, killing people and destroying their hearts. Gao Qiang didn't expect that the research on human weaknesses that Ye Na had been talking about could actually be used. After saying all this, Ye Na blushed and turned his head to the side. Heh, humans. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 310. What are you talking about, dear? Ai's teasing voice came from behind Gao Qiang. Seeing this, Gao Qiang quickly turned around and coughed twice. Then he found Wen Ziyi following behind Ai's. Didn't you follow Jibixian? Gao Qiang asked. Oh, Master Ai's smiled, I'm not good at facing such a polite scene, so I let other people who are better at it go. Compared to this, aren't you curious? Why did we come so timely? Because of Ye Na, Gao Qiang guessed. Ai's rolled his eyes. It's really a waste of time to wait for you for so long. When I heard that you were taken away by the Wuji League, I wanted to bring people to rescue you. Who knew you could resist sending me messages for half a year? Wen Ziyi also nodded on the side. In fact, we had already arranged it on the day you were taken away. As long as you ask Ai's for help, our support will arrive immediately. This. Gao Qiang scratched his cheek. He really didn't know that the saints, who had only participated in a game together, could do this for him. Then look at it from Ai's perspective. Having not thought of her for half a year or a year, is it the same as having a cold war with her? Thinking of this, Gao Qiang hurriedly shook his head. It would be impolite to think about it again. Okay, isn't it all right? Besides, it was me who asked Gao Qiang to wait for me for a few days that caused the trouble. Wen Ziyi, you should say less. At this time, Ai's stood up to smooth things over. But when it came to the trouble, a look of dissatisfaction flashed in Ai's eyes. But no matter what, Gao Qiang is also the newly promoted son of the saints officially announced by our saints. The Wuji League openly targeted our saints, so we have to ask for an explanation, right? It's better to leave now than to wait for a day. I think it's a good idea for us to leave now. Listening to Ai's getting more and more excited, and even stopped calling him Kiss, Gao Qiang quickly interrupted Ai's. Only us. Pointed at the people present. Because the men brought by Ai's were with Jibixian. At present, in addition to Gao Qiang, Ai's and Wen Ziyi, the three sons of the saints, only Ye Na was left. Even Ye Na was not a human. Only us, but not only us. A cunning light flashed in Ai's eyes. According to the information obtained by our informants, the warplane operated by the Wuji League recently has changed. Not only has it entered the Victory Settlement, but the entire plane seems to have been upgraded. Seeing that Gao Qiang didn't understand, Ai's knew that Gao Qiang should not have been exposed to detailed information related to the upgrade. So he picked out some of the key points and talked about them. Most of these upgraded planes will appear near the plane that they are most connected to. That is to say, this newly upgraded plane is very likely to be closely connected to the plane where the Wuji League is located. And with such a short distance, I have a way to open up the channel between the two planes, allowing the two sides to travel to each other within a certain period of time. Gao Qiang nodded. According to Ai's meaning, she seemed to want to use external forces to put pressure on the Wuji League. But in order to prevent accidents, it is better for us to go to the newly promoted plane. Without calling the subordinates brought, Ai's raised a wooden sign from his waist. This is a prop used by the saints to travel on the plane. We generally call it a guide, Ai's explained. Although the movement speed will be slower, it is very portable because it can be carried with you. As he spoke, Ai's crushed the wooden sign in his hand, and a deep passage appeared on the wall next to everyone. "Let's go, dear. The Wiji League's spies will probably receive the news soon and prepare a response. We don't have enough time." As the four people entered the passage on the wall was closed in an instant. At this time, Ji Lenjiao came from the side. "Gao Qiang, Daddy asked me to call you to dinner." The next moment, looking at the dead end in front of him, Ji Lenjiao blinked. "Hey, where are the people?" In the back garden of the Dao Palace, a passage quietly opened. "Wu, I'm so tired." Ixier stretched and walked out of the passage generated by the guide. Unlike the college's jump equipment, the Guide of the Saints adopted the design concept of being close at hand and far away from the world. Although the distance between the starting point and the end point has been greatly compressed, it still needs to be walked by yourself, which is still quite tiring. After Ixier, Gao Qiang and the other two also walked out. And seeing the scene in front of him, Gao Qiang was stunned. Is he back to the Dao dynasty? Although he had never been to this back garden in person, he had seen the scene here on the Tianzhou. If he remembered correctly, this back garden was connected to the emperor's bedroom of the Dao dynasty. Fortunately, it was dark and windy at night, and Wu Mei was a woman. Ordinary imperial guards had no right to enter the back garden at this time, so they were not discovered in the first place. Just when Gao Qiang thought of this, a cry of surprise came from the side. "How dare you, who are you? The bedroom of the Empress is in front of us. Who gave you men the courage to break in here?" Looking in the direction from which the sound came, there were several little palace maids. The dishes that the palace maid was holding were subconsciously smashed to the ground when she saw Gao Qiang and others. The sound of breaking porcelain plates was quite abrupt in the quiet back garden. Ahil frowned. "We're not here to cause trouble. Wen's, find a way to stabilize them." After hearing this, Wen Ziyi shrugged helplessly, walked around several people and walked forward. "You." Just as the palace maids were about to reprimand, the essence of beauty in Wen Ziyi's body came into play. So handsome, so beautiful. Looking at Wen Ziyi's face, several palace maids fell in love unconsciously. Seeing this scene, Ahil couldn't help but move his eyes to the side. What an enviable source of energy. Wen's is getting better and better at utilizing the power of the source of matter. She almost fell into it. But Ahil's willpower is obviously still higher. After recovering from Wen's influence, Ixier looked at Gao Qiang. "You seem to be very familiar with what this place looks like, so the next step is up to you. Wen's can't hold everyone back." Gao Qiang nodded. If this was the Dao dynasty, he really knew where to look for the ruler of the dynasty. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang led the way towards Wu Mei's bedroom. Although the night raid on the Queen's palace doesn't sound good. But after all, things happened for a reason. Wu Mei should forgive herself, right?